A homemade bomb went off today on a crowded commuter train in London.
The threat level remains at severe. That means that a terrorist attack is highly likely, and the public should go about their daily lives but remain vigilant.
They should go around their daily lives and remain vigilant. What in the world does remain vigilant mean? What does that actually mean? If you see a man from the Middle East with a bomb in his hand, don't assume he's going to set it off until it actually goes off, because we may arrest you first for racism. Is that what she means by remain vigilant? I mean, this is how crazy it's become. How it ends, I don't know, but I think only God knows how it ends.
Blessed are the eyes that see what you see. For I tell you, many kings and prophets have desired to see what you see, and have not seen it. To hear what you hear, and have not heard it. I thank you, Father, for hiding these things from the learned and the wise, and revealing them to the innocent and the simple.
On a packed subway train at the height of rush hour, a homemade bomb, a bucket in a freezer bag, burst into flames. Panicked commuters describe a wall of fire and a flash. Olanisha Kumbi describes seeing one woman on the ground.
Like her legs all scraped off, there was blood, like maybe she had burn marks or whatever, like her head, like you could see maybe she was on the floor stamped on, like there was sand, like she just looked complete mess.
Peter Crowley showed where the flames seared his scalp.
I've heard a large bang from the doors on the other side of the tube train, and then this fireball above my head has come, singed all my hair.
It could have been worse. The detonator exploded but failed to ignite the main charge. It contained screws for shrapnel, a timer, and the same kind of explosives used in recent terror attacks. The hunt for the bomber had barely begun when President Trump blamed the attack on sick and demented people who had been in the sights of Scotland Yard, which drew a sharp rebuke from British Prime Minister Theresa May.
I never think it's helpful for anybody to speculate on what is an ongoing investigation.
ISIS claimed responsibility for the London attack. They are gloating over the attack, and as well as the attack in France, where another brave Muslim with a hammer attacked women in the street. But you won't read about that because it doesn't fit the agenda. The British people, the French people had an opportunity to stop this, and they rejected it. They said, we'd rather die. We'd rather continue to dance naked around the fire. We'd rather see our whole nation go up in fire than give in to those nationalists. I don't know how much farther we are from them here in the United States of America. How many different attacks by Islamo-fascists have to occur until you finally have to awaken to the fact that there is a certain segment of the earth that's been at war with the rest of the world for a very long time. Long before we invaded Iraq, long before we were in the Middle East, the Islamo-fascists were killing, maiming, burning, cutting heads off in order to convert everyone around them to Islam. If you don't know history, I can't help you. Those who do not know the history are condemned to repeat it, and boy, are we repeating it.
This morning, as London recovers from the terror attack, a major police breakthrough. An 18-year-old arrested in the southern port city of Dover. But the investigation continues, and there's a heavy police presence at busy London train stations. The UK terror threat raised to critical overnight, the highest possible tier, meaning another attack could be imminent. Counter-terrorism police and MI5 hunting for other suspects. Police saying many could have died if the bomb had fully exploded. We understand it was the same material used in the Manchester Ariana Grande bombing, TATP, known as the Mother of Satan. But it seems the bombers got the mixture wrong, which is why it didn't go off as planned.
Angry protesters took to the streets of St. Louis this evening after a judge acquitted a former police officer of first-degree murder.
Security was heavy in St. Louis today as the city dealt with protests over the latest acquittal of a white cop in the killing of a black man. The protest started off peacefully as hundreds marched through the streets of St. Louis.
It's a peaceful protest. They're saying it's not peaceful because we're not following their orders. People are frustrated. You can't tell us how to protest.
That frustration did boil over at times into repeated clashes with police, and demonstrators took their message directly to Mayor Lyda Krewson's home, spraying it with paint and breaking a window. Later in the evening, the mayor appeared with the city's police commissioner on Periscope.
Officers did deploy pepper balls as a less than lethal option after agitators continued to assault officers with objects and destroy property.
No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace!
It is the second North Korean missile to fly over Japan in the past month. An act of defiance from Kim Jong-un and a major technological advance for his regime. In Japan, alarms blared Friday, warning people to take cover.
So I woke up this morning with a really loud noise on my phone. Find shelter in a basement. North Korea just launched a missile.
This was North Korea's longest ever test flight of a ballistic missile, the weapon traveling some 2,300 miles into the northern Pacific Ocean. And an important point, Guam, a hub of important U.S. military assets, is within that range, only about 2,100 miles from North Korea. Speaking aboard Air Force One, President Trump said he is working with the Chinese on pressuring the North Korean dictatorship and wanted to reassure Americans.
But believe me, the people of this country will be very, very safe.
The launch comes less than 2 weeks after North Korea's sixth and most powerful nuclear test of a hydrogen bomb, and after the United Nations voted Monday for new sanctions against the country, banning its exports of natural gas and textiles. The Pentagon says initial assessments suggest this was an intermediate missile, not an intercontinental missile which could reach the U.S. Still, the move seems to confirm what many experts have long feared. North Korea is closer than ever to its goal of building a military arsenal that can target our forces in both Asia and the U.S. mainland itself.
In Syria, 28 civilians have been killed in 2 separate airstrikes in the eastern province of Deir al-Zor. According to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, a US-led coalition killed 12 members of a single family, including 5 children. Meanwhile, 16 civilians, including 5 children, were killed in a Russian airstrike, which supported a separate government offensive against ISIL.
The shooter may be on the 2nd level. Suspect in his team, 5'7", glasses, 2 jeans.
Amid the school shooting chaos that left 1 student dead, 3 wounded, and a community shattered.
There's just a lot of screaming and crying.
A story of 2 heroes. The first, a 15-year-old boy. He tried talking the shooter out of it.
That young man who gave his life stepped into the breach that we as a society have created to save his fellow classmates.
The second, custodian and Air Force veteran Joe Bowen.
Joe confronted him, ordered him to the ground, and then held him there.
The suspect, a 15-year-old sophomore, we are not identifying because he is a minor. He allegedly told detectives he'd come to the school to teach everyone a lesson about what happens when you bully others, but says he did not target anyone specific. But tonight, questions about missed signals. The sheriff says he wrote a suicide note more than a week ago, and students say he warned them that he was about to do something. Information they say was passed on to school officials, but apparently not to police.
Were you guys ever notified?
We have no knowledge of this one.
But do you feel like you should have known?
I would have loved to have known, because maybe we could have done something.
Conservative Speaker Ben Shapiro takes the stage on the Cal campus in half an hour. Meanwhile, police are taking unprecedented measures to keep protests peaceful.
Fascist act! Get out! You're not welcome here!
We're not your middle school students!
I'm allowed to walk here.
Yeah, we're not your middle school students! Is that all you can say? Come on, man, give me some reason, some evidence. Listen, I just want to talk. All right, suck it!
Thanks
to Antifa and the supposed anti-fascist brigade for exposing what the radical left truly is. All of America is watching because you guys are so stupid. As far as the idea that, I'm a white supremacist in service to Trump Pence, a couple problems there. One, as far as the service to Trump Pence, again, I didn't vote for Trump or Hillary. I didn't vote for either of them, actually. So this idea that I am somehow a servant of Trump is absurd and requires you to be functionally illiterate. As far as the idea I'm a white supremacist, you see the thing on the top of my head, right? This funny hat. It's called a yarmulke. Hey, white supremacists aren't that fond of it. But no, I'm a white supremacist now. Because this is the way the left works, right? If you don't agree with them, everyone's a white supremacist. You're a Nazi, Nazis should be punched, and therefore it's totally fine to stand outside and try to shut down events.
Why not be peaceful about it? Why not, chant and hold your signs and things? But when you take the barricades and you destroy the building, and when you set fires, isn't that counterproductive?
I think that the left has been far too timid for way too long. And it's why we've even gotten in this position where we even have someone like Donald Trump leading a fascist movement as the president of the United States. We need to make sure that we have more mass protests, more militant protests that are mass and militant.
Antifa claims that the fascist Nazi system is against them. Thus, it is their right to use violence to get their point across to the hate groups they supposedly target and ludicrously blame for being behind a republic and melting pot of 325 million Americans. But anybody that has been confronted by Antifa knows full well that Antifa's real enemy is the average American citizen.
What are you guys beating us up for?
What'd you get hit with? Holy sh**.
I just got hit with red paint, if you can see. Fuck you! These guys look like the thugs from Nazi Germany that they claim to be against. They say no fascism. They're acting like fascists. They dress like fascists. They look like fascists. They are the fascists.
The media would also warp your mind into believing that Antifa are solely targeting neo-Nazi, racist skinhead, the KKK, actual white nationalists, and other hate organizations in the United States. 917 of them, according to this map brought to us by the skewed offshore bank accounts of the Southern Poverty Law Center, funded in part by, of all things, your Apple iTunes account.
We would have been crushed like cockroaches if it were not for the anarchists and the anti-fascists who approached over 350 anti-fascists. They saved our lives, actually. We would have been completely crushed, and I'll never forget that.
Meanwhile, as Ben Shapiro prepares to speak at a heavily fortified UC Berkeley tonight, where the local police have been given back their right to use pepper spray, the slimy apologists for the domestic terror group known as Antifa have come out of the woodwork. The Hill reports Mike Isaacson, who is one of the founders of Smash Racism DC, an Antifa organization in Washington, says the justification of the use of violence is that Nazi ideology at its very core is founded on violence and on wielding power by any means. There's the question of whether these people should feel safe organizing as Nazis in public, and I don't think they should, said Isaacson. Mark Bray, a Dartmouth historian and author of a recent book on Antifa activists, justifies their use of violence as self-defense against the inherent danger of fascist organizing. The argument is that it needs to be stopped immediately, Bray says, because if you let it grow, that poses a danger to society. Bray's deceitful and dangerous comment is a study in pure hypocrisy. Antifa is nothing less than an army of confused, whining daycare millennials idiotically fighting for George Soros's New World Order system.